Level 1, the peasant conscript. The year was 1582 and the mud was freezing. He was just a boy, drafted into a war he didn't understand. His cheap straw sandals offered no protection against the freezing sludge, but the daimyo demanded bodies, and so they handed him a weapon. He barely knew which end to hold. The march was long, and the rations were completely non-existent. By day 3, his stomach was screaming. His only meal was a moldy rice ball he found on a dead man. He ate it anyway. Then he saw them, the enemy vanguard cresting the hill. Panic immediately seized his entire body. The order to charge sounded like a death sentence. He didn't run forward. He ran backwards. The chaos of the battlefield swallowed the conscript's whole. An arrow grazed his shoulder. He fell into a trench. He stayed there paralyzed for 3 entire days. When he finally climbed out, the war was over. He had survived. But survival meant nothing without status. He needed to become a real soldier. He picked up a discarded weapon and marched toward the nearest warlord's camp. Level 2, the ashigaru arquebusier. He was no longer just a body. He was an ashigaru. They handed him a matchlock arquebus. It weighed a ton and smelled like sulfur. The firing drills were brutal and deafening. He had to learn the 8 steps of reloading. Pour the powder, ram the ball. His hands shook every single time. In battle, you only get 1 shot before the cavalry reaches you. The day of his first real deployment arrived. He stood in line waiting for the command. The slow match cord burned near his ear. The heat made him sweat profusely. Then the earth began to shake. The enemy cavalry was charging. The commander yelled, "Fire!" The recoil was like getting kicked by a mule. He was thrown backward into the dirt. The entire line vanished in a cloud of thick white smoke. He couldn't see, he couldn't breathe. And his ears were ringing louder than a temple bell. He had to reload blindly. He spilled half the powder on the ground. But his 1 shot had hit a mounted officer. He was given a minor promotion. He was moving up in the world. Level 3, the retainer's attendant. His promotion took him off the battlefield. He was assigned to the estate of a high-ranking retainer. His new weapon was a cleaning rag. He spent 14 hours a day polishing armor. His knuckles bled from scrubbing iron scales, and his knees throbbed from constant bowing. The retainer was a cruel, demanding master. If the tea was too hot, he was beaten. A bamboo cane was the master's favorite teaching tool. He learned to become completely invisible. He learned to anticipate commands before they were spoken. But at night in the servant quarters, he didn't sleep. He practiced with a stolen wooden sword. He swung it 1,000 times in total silence. He memorized the forms he watched the master practice. One day assassins breached the estate. The master's bodyguards were quickly overwhelmed. A real katana lay on the floor, its owner dead. He didn't think, he just moved. He picked up the blade. The assassin didn't expect the servant to fight back. With 1 perfectly practiced strike, he saved his master's life. The master rewarded him with a true name. He was finally a samurai. Level 4, the low-ranking vassal. He was a samurai now. But the reality of his new life was crushing boredom. He was assigned guard duty at the outer gate. He stood there for 12 hours a day, in the freezing rain, in the sweltering heat. He watched wealthy merchants pass by in luxury. They had money, he only had a title. His daily stipend was a pitiful bowl of rice. He was hungry, frustrated, and deeply cynical. He struggled to stay awake on duty. Falling asleep meant instant execution. He would bite the inside of his cheek to stay conscious. He constantly gripped the hilt of his sword, waiting for a war that never seemed to come, until one night the alarm bells rang. A rival clan had launched a surprise attack. He drew his blade for the first time in years. The fighting was brutal in close quarters. He fought like a starving dog. He held the gate single-handedly until reinforcements arrived. The lord of the domain noticed his bravery. He was summoned to the inner keep. He was gifted a warhorse. He was now a mounted warrior. Level 5, the mounted warrior. Riding a warhorse completely changed his status. He looked down on the foot soldiers he used to be. But the cavalry life was agonizing in its own way. The saddle chafed his legs raw. He had to learn horse archery. Drawing the massive asymmetrical bow required immense strength. The target range was unforgiving. The thick hemp bowstring snapped back and sliced his thumb. He had to wear a special leather glove just to survive practice. But when the next campaign began, he was ready. The charge of the samurai cavalry was terrifying. He spurred his horse forward into the chaos. He fired arrows at full gallop. He felt like a god of war. until a peasant with a spear tripped his horse. He was launched violently into the air. He hit the ground hard, his heavy armor crushing his ribs. He was surrounded by enemy infantry. He refused to die in the mud again. He drew his katana and fought his way out on foot. He survived, but his beloved horse did not. He mourned the animal deeply. His ferocity earned him command of his own unit. He traded his horse for a commander's stool. He was now responsible for the lives of others. Level 6, the unit commander. Leadership was entirely different from fighting. The command tent was a place of constant stress. He developed a permanent, agonizing migraine. Logistics were a nightmare. He spent more time doing math than swinging a sword. If the men ran out of rice, they would mutiny. He had to make impossible decisions every day. He had to order boys to charge to their deaths. He had to sign execution warrants for deserters. He watched a young conscript cry before the executioner. He recognized himself in that boy, but he could not show weakness. He maintained a stone-cold, emotionless face. He swallowed his empathy and nodded. He felt a piece of his soul die that day. His unit won battle after battle. His reputation as a ruthless tactician grew. He was respected but deeply feared by his men. He was awarded a master-crafted sword by the daimyo. He accepted it with a hollow heart. His combat days were ending. He was reassigned back to the capital. He was appointed as the clan's master of arms. His new battlefield was the training floor. He would teach the next generation how to survive. Level 7, the master of arms. The dojo was his new domain. It smelled of sweat, polished wood, and discipline. His joints constantly ached with severe arthritis. Every swing of the wooden sword was agony. But he never let his students see him wince. He despised the arrogant young nobles he had to teach. They treated war like a romantic game. He decided to teach them a brutal lesson. He effortlessly parried their sloppy strikes. He struck a noble's knuckles with bone-bruising force. He watched coldly as the boy cried out and dropped his weapon. The dojo fell completely silent. He yelled at the boy to pick it up with his left hand. He demanded absolute perfection. He drilled them until they vomited from exhaustion. He was making them hard enough to survive the mud. Years passed in the dojo. His hair began to gray. He spent his evenings massaging his scarred wrists. He wondered if any of them would actually live. His harsh methods produced the finest swordsman in the province. The Lord recognized his immense value to the clan. He was promoted beyond the military. He traded the wooden sword for a calligraphy brush. He was now a domain administrator. Level 8, the domain administrator. His new battlefield was made of paper. He operated out of a stiflingly hot administrative office. He spent his days managing taxes and grain supplies. His writing hand developed a permanent, agonizing cramp. He had to pry his fingers apart every evening. The physical pain was nothing compared to the politics. The court was a viper's nest of backstabbing advisors. He had to attend endless, agonizing tea ceremonies. A single misplaced word could mean execution. He smiled politely while his stomach twisted in knots. He learned to lie better than he ever learned to fight. He uncovered a plot to embezzle clan funds. He ruthlessly exposed the traitors. He watched them be led away in chains. He felt no pity, only cold efficiency. His ruthless competence terrified the other bureaucrats. He amassed vast wealth, but had no time to spend it. He lived entirely for the clan's survival. The Lord's health began to fail. A succession crisis loomed over the domain. He maneuvered behind the scenes to secure the heir. When the old lord died, he was the one holding the strings. The new, young lord appointed him to the highest office. He was given the seal of the chief retainer. He was now the second most powerful man in the province. Level 9, the chief retainer. He was the true ruler of the domain in all but name. The weight of the entire clan rested on his aging shoulders. He suffered from crippling insomnia. He secretly wore iron armor plates under his silk robes. Paranoia consumed him. He trusted absolutely no one. He had to make terrible sacrifices to keep the clan alive. He signed alliances that doomed allied villages. He ordered the assassination of political rivals. His hand hovered over a death warrant for an old friend. His chest tightened with a deep, agonizing emotional ache. But the clan's survival was the only thing that mattered. He slammed the red ink stamp down forcefully. The deed was done. His soul was completely gone. He looked utterly hollow. He guided the clan through a decade of brutal civil war. Finally, peace was declared across the nation. His life's work was complete. He handed the gold seal back to the Lord. He officially requested to step down. The lord granted him a massive estate for his service. He left the castle for the final time. He stripped off the hidden armor plates. He put on the simple robes of retirement. He was finally free. Level 10, the elder statesman. He lived out his days in a quiet, beautiful estate. The courtyard was perfectly manicured. He breathed in the crisp winter air. He looked down at his own trembling hands. Every scar told a story of survival. He looked out into the distance. A group of new conscripts were marching by the estate. He leaned forward, his expression changing to surprise. One of them was a 15-year-old boy in a dirty tunic. The boy was terrified, struggling under a heavy rusted spear. He observed the fresh, bloody blisters on the boy's feet. The boy stumbled in the mud, just like he did 50 years ago. The boy looked up and caught the old man's gaze. Time seemed to completely stand still. A heavy, profound sorrow settled into his chest. He closed his eyes in realization. He realized he was looking at a ghost of himself. The cycle of suffering was beginning all over again. He took a slow, deep breath to steady himself. He opened his eyes. He watched the boy disappear into the distance. The world moved on, indifferent to their pain. He picked up his cup of tea. He took a sip, and simply watched the snow begin to fall.